Welcome to the Business of Platforms, a video podcast series where Vivaldi will be chatting with the world's leading marketers, thinkers, and innovators about the evolution of business and the exciting ways in which platforms are helping companies and brands deliver greater value.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Business of Platforms podcast. I'm Tom Agello, the Chief Creative Officer of Vivaldi, and we're lucky enough to be sitting down here today with Bonin Bough. He's the founder and the chief honcho at Bonin Ventures. He's had a pretty incredible past, both in the corporate innovation and in the startup world, in and all around marketing, focusing on driving growth with business. He's an author and ex-TV host and an innovator. And a powerful user of marketing in and around the 5 C's of commerce. And we're super excited to talk to him a little bit today about everything that's going on in his world currently and maybe how he can inspire some of our thinking as we go forward. So Bonin, thank you for joining us. I want to just jump right in. You've been putting a lot of stuff out there that I think our viewers will find very interesting. Definitely I found it very interesting. The text-to-commerce, text-to-content, text-to-messaging revolution is upon us. It's a key contributor to platform design and network effects, things that we're really passionate about. Take us on your journey into the texting revolution and tell us what's next.
Oh God, what's next? The journey was pretty simple. I wanted to write a book on mobility, and I didn't want to do something that was a business book. I wanted to do something that really looked at society and was a bigger book than, hey, here's how we as an industry, which I love those, but I felt that the phone was having such an impact on society that we hadn't talked about that I really wanted to document that. And what I did was I decided to write a book. Originally, the book was supposed to be called Digilance. And the idea was that it was going to be this big book, Freakonomics. And it was going to be the Freakonomics of the mobile generation. And the plan was to look at the untalked about and undiscussed impact that mobile's had on every aspect of life, which we did do, everything from dating to parenting to memory to relationships, you name it. And I wanted to hear from the best and brightest in the world, so we did an interview book. It was 120 interviews with everybody from Pharrell to Dick Costello, who was the CEO of Twitter at the time, to Peter Guber, owner of the Dodgers and the Warriors, Chopra, you name it. And we were sitting in a coffee shop, myself and the researcher, Luke Robert Mason, who's still with me, really smart individual. And we realized that we hadn't talked to enough people because the impact that this was having on society was much greater. So we decided to change the name to Text Me and put my phone number on the book. But what really struck me during that process was I had to move to China to relaunch Oreo and to build later, I guess, e-com, but to relaunch Oreo. And it also made sense for the book writing because of an interview book, and this way I could be on the other side of the time frame from most of the people that I was interviewing, and because it gave me a 12-hour time difference, so instead of battling my schedule and theirs, I could say, you name the time, and of course I would get up at 4 a.m. The difference is China, you really never sleep, so I spent a lot of tireless nights that year, and rough days. But what was more interesting was I was watching the rise of WeChat. And I thought to myself, I had been, my first web company was in college, pre-95, or actually I guess post-95, pre-99. And I had been, a developer, a tech guy for my whole life, and I've watched the change from internet, and then I built a digital, so we sold that business, and I built a digital practice at that time at the largest privately held PR agency, and so I saw the growth of intranets and kind of how and websites and how that world took off. And then we moved into blogs, and we launched EPR, which was electronic public relations. In fact, it's interesting, we coined the term, you still hear it in Asia. And then I left there and went to IPG and built the digital practice for the largest PR agency in the world, as well as ran the investment group for IPG, did the first Facebook investment, and then started partnering with startups and rolling across IPG. So I saw kind of how the startup landscape worked. And Pepsi, in partnership with built the first corporate accelerator. And anyway, I've seen all these waves, social, I've seen all these waves, and I see how they begin, and they all begin with the same exact thing, is that the amount of human attention moves. And when human attention moves, ultimately, marketers ultimately have to follow. And if you can be there before, and that's that gap, right? So it's television. If I came into your office in the 1950s and said, hey, I want you to use this thing called TV, you say, get out of my office, because this thing called radio is doing really well for me. But what happened was three bold brands, P&G, Unilever, and Kraft, jumped in because they saw that consumer consumption began to eclipse where investment was. And it's in those deltas, and we talk a lot about finding those deltas, that you find opportunities. So,
and mobile's there now.
Not just mobile, so this was texting, and so that was the beginning of it. And then I came back, and I just had this burning desire to go into building what that ecosystem was going to look like. And so a year later, I quit what people would say probably one of the best jobs out there. I was, chief media and e-commerce officer. I'd grown e-com 65 to 265. I was seventh largest buyer in the world, but I just thought that this ecosystem was going to be the future, and so here we are. So I believe it is.
So did you see things happening at that time with in your existing position with texting that kind of sparked a light, or that gave you a sense of where things are headed?
It was really that time in China, just realizing that human attention was there, and that everything that exists for ad tech today needs to exist for message tech tomorrow, and that none of it exists.
And now we sit on this ecosystem, so it's not just WeChat, right? We're talking about Facebook Messenger, we're talking about messaging behind Instagram, WhatsApp. TikTok, WhatsApp, the list goes on, right? So
the WhatsApp guys came to me when I had just joined Mondelez and said, hey, we really want you to be an advisor. And this was in London. We had just brought a little web to London. And I was like, I decided I'm not going to make that mistake again, right?
So Zuckerberg just came out recently, right? Among all the ways Zuckerberg comes out recently. And he showed us a little bit of a roadmap for how Facebook and Messenger is going to start to unite, and they're going to be more of this messaging-based platform, which is probably not surprising to those of us who, kind of understand, I think, the mechanics of all this and where things are going. So for me, that starts to say, okay, so I can start to see the platform behind there, right? But for the average small business, for clients perhaps maybe that you advise, or ventures that you're involved in, for the clients that we talk to on a daily basis, for our viewers, how does texting, where's the exponentiality in texting when you talk about branding, when you talk about network effects and connecting with your customers more than a one-to-one level?
Yeah, well, the funny thing about this is that this is such a profound revolution, and the crazy thing is the industry is so slow to move. We are always so slow to move to it, which blows my mind. In 2016, right before I left, I launched the Message Lab, and there's a release where I said that messaging was going to be bigger than social media, and everybody was like, no way. Well, the time is upon us, and I think Zuckerberg's announcement speaks to how big it is. Exponentiality will be built in the same exact... Look, the beauty is we used to think that it was a one-to-one relationship with Twitter, and we were going to directly connect with our consumers, and that was a dream. Well, that never really happened. Now we actually have that opportunity, but we also have the opportunity to share things that if they enjoy, they'll share. The reality is how much network effect is generated by consumers just sharing Giphy, just sharing, I shouldn't even talk about Giphy because emoji, which is one of our portfolio businesses, is much more important than Giphy.
Sure.
But sharing, and so it's happening in a dark web that's unmeasurable today.
So text becomes the platform, whereby Giphy, just like use Giphy on Facebook Messenger, use it on Slack, use it in texting. It's all text to content. Messaging. Period.
Look, messaging will be the browser of your world moving forward. What's interesting? So we all saw Super Bowl, right? Well, maybe not all, but those
Patriots fan?
Yeah, no, not at all. Those who were, less fortunate in the world to have to watch it. But anyway, no, who forced themselves to. If you look at the ads, the ones I thought were the most interesting were the T-Mobile messaging ads. And
Bingo.
Those were the best. To me, they also speak to where the world is. But the more interesting thing was the one where he's texting, the dad thinks he's texting Google, and the son goes, I'm not Google. He goes, okay, great, but that is where the world is. So eventually you are going to text Google. Right now we have messaging platforms that allow you to text with businesses and provide. The thing that was sad in that was there's no conversational design or thought of it yet.
Yeah.
There's no visual design. The crazy thing is the first text message was sent in 95, and then it was a gray bubble with black text. And today we still send gray bubbles with black text.
Yeah.
Enter a company we invested in called Open Message, which is the future, I believe, of conversational design.
Yeah, conversational design is critical. One of the things I like to talk a lot about is just micro interactions and how these little micro moments in texting. The T-Mobile ad's a perfect example of it. You say, to a significant other, what about us? And the next response is the ... Right? All the emotion that's packed up in those 3 dots waiting for that text to arrive. Or Facebook Messenger, when you hold down the thumbs up button and you get the different sizes of the, the thumbs up. It's just, those magic moments are the glue, I think, between imagery, right? So I could see, maybe we're saying brands have a really interesting opportunity of, they could be the glue, right, in these platforms. Between those moments, there's personality that you could bring in there. How do they serve customers? How do they take advantage of, say, maybe, one of your ventures, or how do they take advantage of messaging in their day-to-day? They want to dip their toe in the water right now. How do they look at that?
Don't fuck it up. I'm serious. I got a text today. I text with over 50,000 people, and somebody asked me, they said, they go, this is great. We love text messaging, huge opportunity, but what happens when it becomes a wasteland and brands, send stuff that I don't want? And the sad thing is that could be the future, unless we actually take it seriously. But the beautiful thing is it's such a personal space that most people are going to say, I don't care about you, I don't want you, you weren't invited, or even if I invited you, you are now disinvited, in a way that you're not trimming your social platforms. And so this is going to be the hardest game on earth to get and stay inside of somebody's most personal space. This is where I text my friends,
that's right,
my loved ones, my most important business contacts. And what we forget is that the sophistication of the messaging platforms are going to become that much greater. Today, your text message, your contacts are as dumb as your Rolodex was in the 1940s, right? I can't go and say, show me every investor I have. I can't go and say, show me what my conversational relationship is. So another company that we have an investment in is Superphone. The amazing thing is I can actually go in and read the health of my conversation. I can see how many times you text me versus me text you. I can see what the pieces of that conversation are that actually trigger high response or trigger low response. All this type of analysis and ability to categorize my messages are going to come in the same way that they exist today for email. And that sophistication is going to give the consumer even more control. So if you haven't figured out, or you aren't focused on how to provide true value for the consumer, you don't have a chance. And that's what we're telling brands is like, look, wake up. This is where your consumers are. They're done with kind of the way you've been talking to them today. And look, I feel like it's like, Groundhog's Day, like we're doing this all over again.
Actually, it was Groundhog's Day.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
Although I don't know how we ended up there. Did he see a shadow? Did he not?
Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know. I think we saw our own shadow, and we don't like it.
Yeah. No, it's good. You're striking a chord, and I think it's interesting because so many brands right now are thinking about how they can create network effects. How do they engage? How do they create this one-to-one personal relationship? And I liken a lot of corporate teams as this sort of heavyweight fighter, going down in the 18th round, swinging at flies a little bit. And there's such an amazing opportunity using simple, straightforward, right, one-to-one type platforms to actually be part of a platform or develop their own platform and connect. It definitely, the experience that you have speaks volumes, and I think it should be inspirational for a lot of people to hear.
This is the next wave of commerce.
Yeah.
I mean, like at the end of the day, look, I fly all the time. All I want to do is be able to text American Airlines and say, move my flight to the next one.
Yep.
Like that's so simple, and I'm willing to pay whatever it takes for that. Dude.
Every single time you fly, you have to reintroduce yourself to the airline like they've never met you before, right? It should be a dialogue. It should be a conversation.
And why am I have to pick up the phone? Like phones is antiquated. I don't even know. Did you see there's this video and they're showing kids trying to dial a rotary phone? They have no clue how to do it. I mean, phones that's the technology that we're still dealing with. Like that's an antiquated business to me for business to consumer interaction.
And all these CRM platforms and one-to-one interaction there.
People are still stuck on email. Who reads email anymore? Like I only conduct. And that's the crazy thing, is what we do as an industry is the same thing as we stick our head in the sand and we pretend that the world operates outside different than we operate. And the reality is that every important business or negotiation or transaction that you're trying to close, you're doing on text, you're not doing it on email. So what makes you think as a marketer that people care about the emails that you're sending them? They've moved, dude, just like you have. How come we can't, when we go into those four walls, sadly we go into those four walls, we forget how humanity operates, and we believe that it can operate in this box that we want to put it in, and that's the failure of marketing today.
So let's take this to B2B, because I love where you're headed, and I personally think in B2B there's this other incredible space as well. So, take Microsoft Teams, take Slack for example, right? Slack is like this. So, does messaging through something like Slack become the corporate dashboard? Does it become the interface by which business happens?
It already is. It's called Slack. I mean, Slack's already proved it. The scarier thing is who's managing the B2B relationships that you're working on? What platform? So I'm a sales guy. Let's take any ad sale. Let's take a Microsoft enterprise salesperson, right? Every relationship that I'm trying to close, I'm doing a messaging. The moment I decide I want to quit, guess what happens to all those relationships? They leave. They leave Microsoft. So Microsoft, you name any enterprise sales function, they're fooling themselves. Right now, all they're doing is losing the clients that they have, because all of that client data is stuck in the salesperson's phone. And instead of giving them a platform like Superphone or Zingle or something that, beyond just being able to manage and own those relationships, give them intelligence. Intelligence. So things like, if I don't remember to call you, or if I don't remember to text you, set some time frame where it'll text you a week from now or whatever. Or allow me to connect you to digital document libraries across my stack, which I know might be beneficial to you. Or let me know when sales or product changes or whatever. There's no, or analyze my conversation. Tell me how close I am to the close. The fact that we're not doing any of that, but yet the activity is happening, is mind-blowing to me, and it's a fail on industry today.
And then, you touched upon Superphone and Zingle. So there's ML behind those, right? There's a lot of interesting technology that's allowing for those tools to give the right information to the customer, so that you can be more with your text me game that you're playing and your book that you're doing right now, right? So how is that? How does the data and the analytics part of that support you? And how could you see that data and analytics side of it growing to perhaps support enterprises?
I mean, again, look, this is so social is what happens when we want people to believe something's happening. This is what happens when something's actually happening. I mean, the conversations that you're having within this channel are real conversations. And even more than that is that we've bypassed. So email has all the formalities, like, hey, it's been so long since we've seen each other. Hope we can connect. Love to show you what I'm like. Text is like, here's what I need. Let's get this done. There's none of those formalities. And so it gets to the root of what the meaning of what we're trying to accomplish in that conversation or in that connection with the consumer. So the analysis of that is showing true human intent. So the future of that, so I look at another company, we have Emoji. They'll do over 1 trillion, they will analyze over 1 trillion conversations this year. First of all, that's mind-blowing, over 1 trillion. I asked them, I said, hey, I want to see, show me what well, I shouldn't give it away. But anyway, you can imagine there was a certain event that we would love to know what the emotion of that event was. You figure it out, given the time this is released. It might be past that, so I might not. Anyway, whatever, Super Bowl. Because what's interesting is that with Emoji, you get more than just the actual image, but you also get the text that's describing the moment and the emotion. So now you have multiple cues. And so to me,
such important data for businesses, right?
Huge data for businesses.
Huge Way data more intentional data than you could ever expect out of a straightforward, there's the message that you intend to give a company, and then there's the context clues that you could pull away from interactions, which is almost like there's exponentiality right there, isn't there? And
the fact that we don't have more, the fact that we're not doing more in the space as an industry is mind-blowing to me. But here's the saddest thing to me out of all of this is that we don't learn. We do not learn. How many times have we sat there? Even still, people are, I'm really skeptical of text. Okay, just like email. Okay, just like internet. Okay, just like stone tablet. Like, okay, like what does it take? How much do we have to get beat up by the consumer moving so fast? And then we're like, then we throw conferences that are like the fast moving consumer. How do we now connect? Well, it's like, as an industry, it's so this is what I'm saying. I was sitting there. The cues are so simple. It's like, consumer attention's moved. Let's figure out how to be a part of that consumer attention and do it in a respectful way, so you don't destroy it like we destroy everything else. But what the most mind blowing thing is how slow we are as an industry.
What I love about it is that you almost have to do it in a respectful way because messaging is so close, right? Like you said, it's so emotionally important for people. It's sort of do or die. Get it right or you're irrelevant.
Yeah. So again, I'm just rattling off our companies. A company called Tap On It that does local deals and offers across the nation, and people now get a simple text up to twice a week with deals and offer, and they use it as discovery of what restaurants are near them. But the fact that there's an absence of just that when you look at how simple that interaction is and how much people love it, or another piece is with Open Message, which is, I'm very excited about Open Message, and the potential there are 2.8 trillion business to consumer messages today that go unmonetized. Unmonetized. That's insane to me. So a quick example is you walk into a restaurant, you pay, swipe with Square, punch in your phone number, you get sent a receipt. That's it.
Conversation ends.
That's it. Is that insane? Why can't that restaurant send you, hey, 20% off next time you come in? Free bottle of wine.
So this is why we're catching nuts. Up. Yeah, we were catching up earlier, and I was mentioning Dirty Lemon, and that's actually why I experimented with Dirty Lemon before you and I got together, was just to get a good sense of how they were going to take advantage of the fact that I chose to text them instead of dealing with the rest of the website in terms of putting my number in. So my first test was I'm gonna abandon the shopping cart. They've got my phone number. Let's see. About 24 hours later, they wrote me back. Hey, do you want to complete your transaction?
Shopping cart abandonment.
Yep. Bam.
One win.
Yep. So, and then of course
By the way, the first thing they ask you for is your phone number.
Yeah.
People ask me, I'm like, dude, when I was leaving Mondelez, I said, hey, what if we gave a free pack of Oreo to every single person who's willing to text us? They were like, never going to do that, Bonin. In my mind, I was like $4.50 for the phone number of a person who I know already likes my product. That's pennies on the dollar to me. But getting that kind of math and not understanding. But Dirty Lemon, first thing they do is ask and say, no, your phone number is more important than anything on planet Earth, dude.
Yep. Yeah. And they used it. Yeah, and it's funny. I was, so then, I told you, but I was kind of playing with them to get a sense of where their personality was. Once they had me on the hook, I was like, so if I start asking them product questions, running a little bit of the Turing test, were they going to kind of jump out of costume a little bit and try to keep me baited? That's why I asked them tough questions like, can I divide up a case? Do I have to get all in one case? And I could see where they switched to somebody that was really more engaging me. And it's good. They got the sale. I mean, that's what it was, right? But you see it time and time again. So you got a couple other businesses you're starting up as well, right? You got something going on with bread, and you got a baby food thing going on. Tell us about that.
Sure, yeah. So we do have bread. I wish I started it because that is going to be a rocket ship. That is, but that's easily $1 billion business, but multi-billion-dollar business. But what's interesting about the bread business? So it's actually Wilkinson Bakery. I affectionately named it #BreadBot, which we started. I met them in February. I was in Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and I was speaking, and they came up to me, and they showed me this machine. They said, look, we think we're going to transform bread. And I was like, okay, bread, right. And they show me, and then so the crazy thing is that consumers don't have access to bread today. They live in bread deserts. In fact, think about it. Most of the bread that they're sold is shelf stable. Even if they go to the bakery and they get bread, usually 2/3 of it is cooked before and then heated up at the bakery. So you don't know where it's from, how long it's been. So you don't have access to fresh bread. BreadBot, from the moment the mix is poured into the machine, 100 plus lasers take over, measuring out the perfect amount, measuring out the water, the yeast, and then it goes through the kneading process, then it goes through the rising and measures whether it's a high rise or a low rise, and it individually monitors each tray, and then it goes into baking, and so every 6 minutes a fresh loaf of bread comes out of this machine. But more importantly is you get, no preservatives. You get fresh and local ingredients. You also can see where your bread's coming from. In terms of retail, it's retail entertainment. People love going up. You can smell the bread being made, and you get a fresh loaf of bread. So as a consumer, the consumer value prop is huge. Then when you look at the retailer side, it also gets really interesting, which is bread is actually a loss leader. So most retailers make 10 cents on average on bread. In order to have a grocery store, you have to have 4 things, and it's basically milk, butter, bread, and cheese. Sorry. And if you don't have those, then you don't really have a grocery. The supply chain knows that, so they pressure the business, and so they make on average 10 cents. And the way the economics work is that it costs a little bit for the mix. You pay for the baking, you pay for the distribution, and then there's a little bit of cost for the labor once it reaches the store. What we do is we cut 2/3 of that process out. And so we give that right back, 2/3 of that cost, and we give it right back to the retailer. So now you can go from 10 cents on average to $2 to $2.50. And that savings can be delivered right back to the consumer. So now they get a much better product. The retailer gets a huge economic advantage, as well as they're able to give a better price to the consumer. So that's transformational in and of itself. And I love stuff like that. It's rare that you get on both sides a huge win-win. So that's great. On the baby food front, what we began to realize is the same thing that's being challenged is that fresh product, access to fresh is very hard. The last innovation in baby food happened, 10 years ago. Baby food was invented in 1936, but 10 years ago the pouches came, which are great, convenience factor, but many of the pouches have been on the shelf maybe longer than your baby's been born. There's one fresh refrigerated pouch in the marketplace today. But once you graduate from pouches, or even if you forego pouches and go into like baby-led feeding, there is nothing in the marketplace. So there's Puffs, which are like Cheeto. There's Go-Gurt, which is like 2 cans of Coca-Cola. There's Cheerios, which we love, but not a lot of diversity there. So what we have is, it's called Tiny Organics, and it's a fresh refrigerated finger food, or frozen finger food for babies. And so all natural ingredients. We have a Michelin star chef who's been at Noma, Per Se, Le Bernardin, diversity of offering, but it's text to buy. And what's crazy is beyond just text to buy, it's text to talk. So moms, the other side of the equation is the last innovation in mom information didn't happen since Baby Center. So here you now have a platform where you can engage mom, you can have real conversations on the challenges that they have, as well as begin to build that relationship.
Yeah, it's a feedback loop and an ordering loop and the whole thing. So is BreadBot and the baby product, they're both in the wild right now?
They're in the wild. I mean, BreadBot is in supermarket, and Tiny Organic is available for order.
So how is BreadBot connecting to customers? You work in messaging, or
it's interesting. So we start, so it has a screen. The ideal of it is to eventually be able to personalize your bread. So you can actually choose the mix that you want. So that's
you have a Krispy Kreme thing going on, right?
Exactly.
The BreadBot lets you know, and the fresh stuff's coming out the other side.
Soon to have BunBot, and soon to have BaguetteBot. So on and so forth.
That's cool. All right. Yeah. So we're getting somewhere short on time. You got a lot in, which I think is great. You're obviously really inspirational to talk to. Anybody that's seen your stuff or watch your videos, I'm sure would agree. But I wonder, where do you go for inspiration? You're so inspirational for so many. This has been an inspirational conversation, but you got to go and reset, or you got to open your mind up. Where's that place for you?
It's definitely not within the 4 walls of an office building. Where the biggest inspiration is from all the people I get a chance to meet. So, one of the things that I love talking, I love giving speeches, because what happens is when I come off stage, there's usually, a line of people who want to talk. And that moment is the most eye-opening moment. Because everybody's got different ideas. Everybody's got a dream of what the future should be. And hearing that, or I'll tell you, the other place that's super inspirational is just text. I mean, look, text me, 646-759-1837. But, I get to have conversations. That's the thing, is that ideas are what's generated, with conversation,
Yeah.
and that's the most inspiration
It's
I
within
find.
it. So what's the most interesting thing somebody's texted you since you've been on this journey?
The most interesting thing?
Which, by the way, I asked Dirty Lemon as well, and they told me the pictures that they get, which I thought was pretty fascinating. I don't want to see them. But
Yeah, I get photos and stuff like that. The most interesting thing ever, there's a lot, there's so many conversations, but I'll give you one. Usually I read one, which is a great conversation, but I'll give you a different one, which a woman texts me, and everybody says either hi, so I'm like, hi back, like I don't got time for this, I texted 50,000, that's the best you have, hi, or hey, I'm like, hey back, right? So comes in, it can always come in hot, like, hey, and you're like, okay, then they're like, oh, it's really you, so hey, this comes in, nothing from there on. Then I get a text that said, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I texted you and you wrote back to me, and I was so nervous about texting you back, but I found you because I was in a car accident and the doctors thought I was going to be paralyzed, and all I could do was watch videos, and I found Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, I don't know why I listed those two first, and you found me, that they found, anyway, whatever. Top three is like, who's the best MC, Biggie, Jay-Z, or Nas? You figure it out. And she said, and I would watch the videos, and she said, and every day I would put my legs over the side of the bed and try to move them. And then I was watching your video on text and how important it was, text. And she said, one day I put my legs over the side of the bed and my legs moved. And she said, and I began my journey of recovery. And she said, but I knew that I couldn't go back to doing my old job, given what had happened. So she said, I started a food delivery company, but like a mass food for events and catering company. And I only did it on text to order. She said, and it's changed my life. And
Bam.
she said, I just wanted to send you a note to say thank you so much. And then I'm no longer afraid to reach out to you. And so we've been texting ever since.
So cool.
That was great. Yeah.
So cool. Yeah, it's good. All that happened over text.
All that happened over
Amazing.
text. I mean, think about it though. Some of the best relations. I mean, I have people who many of them I've never met. I have this one person, I don't know, male, female, I don't know. All they do is send me photos, just randomly photos. And I'll just text back like, hey, how you doing? They'll send a photo, like to represent how they're doing. Sometimes it's like gloomy, sometimes it's bizarre, but that's like our relationship. And you know what? It makes me smile.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's good. I was going to ask you for some words of wisdom. If you have words of wisdom, it sounds like you've given a lot today, but
be who you are and don't be afraid if that who you are is different from everybody else.
good advice. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Good to have you here today, sir.
Pleasure.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much.